The New York Jets get a major gift from the Las Vegas Raiders during the 2025 NFL Draft. We're going to be talking about it on today's edition of the Jets Report by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to watch today's show. So what is the major gift that the Raiders gave the New York Jets? Well, it was them deciding to select Ashton Jeanty over Armand Membou with the 6th overall selection. Now, obviously the Raiders were in desperate need of a running back, but they also had a lot of major needs on their roster, and they're on the offensive line this year has looked like the worst in the league. So their decision of taking Ashton Jeanty over Armand Membou was a huge advantage for the New York Jets because the Jets would have been in a tough position. If Membou would have went 6, you would have still had Jeanty on the board there. Obviously, Jets wouldn't have taken him, but then it would have been interesting to see where the Jets could have gone. But this selection, I am still shocked that the Raiders ended up drafting Jeanty over Armand Membou. And this is no slight to Ashton Jeanty and who he was as a prospect. I still think he could be a fine running back in the NFL. He could still be top of the league, but he just hasn't lived up to the 6th overall selection. And just in terms of where the Raiders were at, like normally if a team's taking a running back in the first round, like they view themselves as like a piece away or a weapon away from going on a run. And it's not where the Raiders were. They ended up taking Ashton Jeanty, and it ended up being a huge benefit to Armand Membou, who has had a fantastic season. So we'll talk about Armand Membou. We'll talk about who the Jets maybe could have drafted it if they did not have the chance to draft the Missouri offensive tackle. But show Armand Membou some love. Type those 70s down below in the comment section. Type his jersey number. Guy's been on an absolute tear this season. So let's show the franchise right tackle some love. So the PFF grades for Armand Membou so far shake out like this throughout his 2025 season. He has played in 616 snaps, having an overall PFF grade of 75.3, which is 20th in the NFL. Pass blocking grade, 72.1, ranks out as 29th. And his run blocking grade, he has been a mauler in the run game, 76.9, which is 15th overall in the NFL. And honestly, I think the PFF grade is kind of slight the way he's been playing because, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, not trying to, get a hot take by saying this, but Membou might legitimately be the second best player on the New York Jets roster. I think Garrett Wilson holds that title right now. But besides that, it's probably the right tackle Membou because this guy's been awesome. And, he has had some great performances against some great defensive edges in the league so far. He hasn't really had his welcome to the NFL moment. Like, for a 21-year-old kid, he has stepped in and has played some great football. And that was so key for the Jets because you were looking at their offensive line. It's like, all right, Fashanu, still a question mark there at the left tackle spot, but he's ended up playing well. And now you got Membou balling out. Like, you got your franchise tackle duo in the last 2 drafts, which is huge. But I think what's interesting here with the Jets, like, who would they have potentially drafted? With the Jets being at that pick number 7, if let's just say the Raiders would have made the right decision of drafting Membou at pick number 6, there's huge question marks on who the Jets would have drafted. Now, obviously, they were connected heavily to the tight end position, and specifically Tyler Warren. So I think he probably would have been the selection, which would have been a good choice. Now, you wouldn't have taken Mason Taylor in round 2. You would have probably tried to take another offensive tackle with the 42nd overall selection, but maybe they would have potentially loved Colston Loveland. Still a little shocked that the Bears took Loveland over Warren, but I think Loveland's going to end up being a stud in the league. Or maybe you took who the Saints took at pick number 9 in Calvin Banks Jr., but I mean, still, like, there's a huge drop-off, and, Warren's fantastic, Loveland's fantastic, and even Banks has shown flashes, but there's a drop-off from a guy like Membou to these 3 you see up here, because obviously the tackle position a lot more valuable than a tight end. And what was so great about Membou, kind of I hinted to it, is he still has not had his welcome to the NFL moment. Like, we knew he was a home run pick since week 1. He was lining up against TJ Watt, and he blanketed him. 0 pressures, 0 sacks allowed, 0 flags. He had a almost perfect game week 1 against a Pittsburgh Steelers front with not only TJ Watt, but they got some dogs over there in Pittsburgh who play some good football. But even he was great against Myles Garrett. Like, Myles Garrett, the year he is having, he has 18 sacks in 11 games. I think he is the best football player alive right now, even over Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, all these quarterbacks. Like, Myles Garrett is an absolute game wrecker. I think he's got 13 sacks over his last 4 games, to be specific, and he's just been awesome. And Membou held his own against Garrett, only allowed 1 pressure, I believe, and Fashanu let up a sack that game, but both those guys did a great job against the big fella over there in Cleveland, who is just on an absolute tear this year. So we've seen him not only, dominate lesser opponents, but he has held his own against some of the best edge rushers in the National Football League. And now you're sitting here, and from a roster construction standpoint, where you're like, okay, offensively, we got our offensive line. We got a decent group of weapons. We just got to get that quarterback. But now we can use all these resources this offseason to really attack the defensive side of the field. So I'll ask you guys this. Obviously, offensive tackle, not a need. Shout out to Armand Membou and Olu Fashanu for shoring up those two positions. But you guys let me know, what do the Jets need? What's the biggest position need for the Jets? Drop that down below in the comments section. Before we dive into the rest of today's show, I got to give a massive thank you to the DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring today's video. The football season is in full swing, and what better time to get in on the action at the DraftKings Sportsbook than right now? DraftKings is the best place to bet touchdowns this season. Who do you have this Sunday? Get in on the action and use my promo code JETSCHAT today. That is promo code JETSCHAT. Football season is the best time of the year. Keep the action rolling with the DraftKings Sportsbook today, and whether you are into live in-game betting, same-game parlays, you have all of the options. Sundays are for football and live bets. DraftKings has the industry-leading live betting market availability, and you guys can get in on the action and sign up using my promo code JETSCHAT. The crown is yours. That is promo code JETSCHAT. Once again, thank you to the DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring today's show. Now, let's dive into the rest of today's episode. All right, let's talk about the rest of the Jets season, because obviously this football team being 2-9, not a lot to look forward to, and a lot of meaningless football for the Jets. But you got to still find some stuff that we're going to keep our eyes on. And I'm going to head to the rookie class here, and actually the second pick under the Darren Mougey era, and that being Mason Taylor, the tight end out of LSU. Now, Mason Taylor hasn't been utilized as much as I would have hoped so heading into the year. I still think he's a great talent. You know, when he's got a corner on him, a nickel corner, you know, he's just too big of a guy for them to handle, and that we have seen him be successful lining up against nickel corners. But even if he's got a linebacker on him, most of the time they're too slow. And I think he has been kind of overshadowed a little bit, because you see Colson Loveland, you see Tyler Warren getting all the love, but Mason Taylor is having a sneaky good year too, especially with some terrible quarterback play that he has had to deal with. Now, I also do expect now, with Tyrod Taylor being the quarterback compared to Justin Fields, like Mason Taylor will continue to get involved in this offense. So that's the number one thing I'm looking out for. 85, can he continue to take those next steps and being the franchise tight end? But also from a locker room perspective here, staying engaged is going to be tough, because, you know, I was saying on a previous show, like Aaron Glenn does deserve a lot of credit in keeping these guys locked in after the Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams trade. It's tough to keep this locker room fully bought into the plan and the big idea plan, a big, you know, long-term plan for this New York Jets team. But you're also eventually going to hit a wall where, you know, it's Christmas time's rolling around. You're probably a 2-3 win team, and you're playing some tough teams. You still have a game against the Patriots left. It could get ugly here for this Jets team for the remainder of the season. So how will Aaron Glenn keep them locked in? I think that will be another good example of maybe this Aaron Glenn culture. If this team continues to fight, continues to play hard every single game like they did in Baltimore against the Ravens, that could be a good sign for Aaron Glenn. But also, how about Glenn's offensive coordinator here, Tanner Engstrad? Trying to get evaluation on him, because it was tough to evaluate him with Justin Fields. Like, I think he did his best coming from having a statuesque quarterback like Jared Goff was back in Detroit to having the complete opposite of that in Justin Fields, where he is a good athlete, but in terms of just being a pure passer of the football, you know, he's the worst in the National Football League. So now we're able to get a good evaluation with Tyrod Taylor under center, running the QB1 position. You're starting to see guys like A.D. Mitchell, John Mechie get involved. You're starting to see even the pass game with the running back position get more heavily involved. The Breece Hall having 75 yards there against the Baltimore Ravens. So you are going to get a good evaluation on the offense compared to what you did with Justin Fields at the quarterback spot. And then sticking with the offensive side of the ball here, how about the wide receivers stepping up? Huge question mark. Who's going to be the wide receiver 2? Who's going to be the wide receiver 3 next to Garrett Wilson? Well, at the trade deadline, the Jets acquired 2 guys who has played some good football. John Mechie and A.D. Mitchell. And obviously, A.D. Mitchell had that bad game against the New England Patriots, had some brutal drops. But John Mechie, he looked good in that game. Then Mechie looked good again against the Baltimore Ravens, having 60 yards and a touchdown. And you know, the thing is with A.D. Mitchell, like the natural athletic ability is no doubt there. Like this guy can get open. He can make plays. It's going to come down to him being more consistent, catching the football, not having those bonehead lapses like we have seen. So if you could somehow have those 2 step up for the rest of the year, that makes your offseason plan a lot more manageable, where it's like, okay, let's go get that quarterback. Let's go put a bunch of resources defensively and try to be a formidable team next year. And I am going to look out for the offensive line here as well. Offensive lines have been great. There's no doubt about it. We all know that. No hard-hitting analysis there, but I want to see them take that next step where it's like, okay, we're viewing this Jets offensive line as not only a top 10 unit, but you say a top 5 unit, a top 3 unit. where it's like, hey, Membou's continuing to grow. Fashano's continuing to grow. The interior offensive line continuing to grow and taking that next step from not being just a good unit, but how about let's see them be a great unit? I think that's fully on the table. I mean, the talent's there, the coaching's there, the identity of the football team is built through the offensive line. But all of this, it comes down to the head coach, Aaron Glenn. Can he keep this team bought in where they're not checking out and, getting blown out 42-10 throughout the remainder of the season? So I'll ask you guys this. Do you believe in Aaron Glenn? Can he be the head coach of the future for the New York Jets? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no down below in the comment section. We'll get on out of here. As always, go Jets.